Hello, everybody. Thank you so much for coming to my talk here at GDEX Day 1. I'm so excited to be here, and by now I'm predicting I will already have had a lot of fun with all of you and met some of you um, through the Discord. So today I'm talking to you about creative tools made for people um, who want to make interactive things, um, but don't want to necessarily devote their lives to it. Um, and sometimes these are found within games. Sometimes they're standalone tools. And either way, as more and more people begin to see themselves as creators of interactive things, I think it's awesome that we are developing more and more ways for them to do that. So let's dive in. Uh, Actually, let's not dive in. Let's talk about me. Um, so I am a game designer of educational and family-friendly games. Basically, I like to make kid stuff because kid stuff is the stuff I like. um, yeah, get in touch. So today I want to talk about a very specific set of tools for making interactive things, um, making it super easy to get started and to do, and also to that enable you to make something that's never been made before, that expresses yourself, who you are, a story you want to tell, a feeling you want people to feel, whatever. So um, that's actually a lot tougher than it sounds. It's only three criteria, but um, there aren't a super ton of things in this realm. But luckily, for the past few years, part of my work has been focused on making tools for users to be able to express themselves creatively. And in the course of that, I've developed some opinions about this sort of thing. And so I will inflict those opinions upon you. Um, you can imagine a spectrum that goes from super simple but not so expressive to lots of expressive power, but with a steep learning curve. So yeah, on one side is this coloring app. You get to choose the colors. You cannot color outside the lines. And then on the other side is a full-featured game engine with which you can create basically any of the art forms that have yet been invented, assuming you're not too picky about seeing people live in the flesh. Basically, it's a tool through which you can create um, music, animations, of course, games, uh, sculpture, even from a certain perspective, theater, dance, uh, you know, every kind of art that you can imagine. And yet, it takes a lifetime of devotion to basically master this kind of a tool. Um, and yet, haha, I have fooled you. You are a fool. How do you feel? How do you feel, fool? That this is not a good way to endear myself to my audience. But I apologize. I apologize for calling you a fool. You're not a fool, um, but I consider these to be two different dimensions. How difficult is it to learn a tool? How expressive you can be in that tool? And specifically, I want to talk about a subsection in this graph, um, because I think that there is a sweet spot in the middle, where an 80-20 rule is at play. Um, you can make stuff that is really expressive and really easy to learn. I mean, it's not maximally expressive, but we get most of the way there, but with only 20% of the effort. 80-20 rule. Um, so uh, I think that there are qualities that tools in this region share. Um, Hitting this sweet spot requires these three things. Now, they're not necessarily sufficient. There's not necessarily um, eh, there may be more qualities like this that need to be identified, but these are three of the ones that strike me as most salient. So, first of all, focus. I try, and yet so many distractions. Focused tools have a specific idea for what are the boundaries of the types of things their users are going to be able to create. And Sok-Stories is an amazing example of a very focused experience. You can make uh, things with multiple sort of rooms, static rooms where you can drag anything around and drag it over other things. And then when you drag things over other things, they recombine into new things potentially, or some of them are annihilated, or any combination. Um, and they give you this sprite drawing tool that makes lo-fi drawing sort of uh, the norm in the social science sense of being the accepted culture of games made in this tool. Um, Now, we could have a whole discussion about um, enabling users to draw freely. There's definitely a conversation to be had there, and also to write freely in text. There are two schools of thought. On one hand, you've increased the expressive bandwidth by an order of magnitude or more. But on the other hand, you've just opened up your platform to all kinds of profanity and abuse. And, it's a conversation that's about degree rather than kind, because we all know profanity and abuse have ways of expressing themselves no matter how free the tool is. Um, uh, I don't know. Dicks find a way into your game. Uh, Anytime there's user creation, but there's tool solutions to that. There's moderation and acculturation solutions to that. Um, and it's sort of where do you want that blend to be? Anyway, onward. Um, so another great example of a focused experience is Mario Maker. Um, it's super focused. You make Mario levels. They're always platformers. Um, you're always viewing them from the side. You always jump the same height. Now, of course, there's tons of variety within that, and if you've played a number of Mario Maker levels, you'll notice that some of them are themed after entirely different games. There's like Undertale levels in Mario Maker. There's, of course, now Zelda levels in Mario Maker. Um, there's some variety, but if you look at the whole landscape of games, this is a narrow slice. Um, but I think it benefits, as does Sok Stories, from that focus. Um, it allows users to get a handle on what can be done. Um, the, there's something intimidating about an empty canvas, especially if that canvas goes on forever in all directions. It's where do you start? Well, with Mario Maker, you start by making, maybe a Mario level you've seen before, maybe something like one of the levels you've played before. Um, there's yeah, that's the beauty of a focused tool. So these tools aren't, the difficulty in getting started isn't just about the inherent complexity. It's also about how you're exposed to that complexity. So uh, this is something I like to pick on Scratch because it's from MIT and they deserve to be taken down a notch, first of all. But also, I'm in the educational games world, and there's a lot of talk about Scratch, and I think it's a great tool, and it's perfect for guided experiences with instructors. Um, but I think it's actually closer to the top right section of our graph with high expressiveness and high difficulty. I mean, if you just look at the left side there, there's all those tools, and those are just the tools for motion. You can see there's also tools for looks, sound, events, control, sensing, operators, variables, my blocks. Those are all tabs with lots of different tools inside them. And then at the top, that's just code. There's also costumes and sounds that you can edit. So there's a lot of power here, and the way that power is introduced to you is basically it's all laid out. Um, and it's introduced through this video that's in the modal, and there's text-based things or whatever, but it's I think it really relies on the instructor-led experience, and therefore um, uh, you know when you open it up as a new person, it can be a little bit jarring. But contrast that with Twine, where um, most people are introduced to it through some sort of tutorial, and almost all of those tutorials tell you two things. First, how to make you how to make a link between passages that is just bare text, um, and how to make a link between passages that is text where the link does not have to, the text you see in the passage doesn't have to match the name of the passage you go to. So you can actually just stop there. For a lot of people, that's all they need from this tool. You can make an interactive fiction, uh, of uh, even more complexity than many other tools with just those two text commands. Um, so it's very powerful very quickly, and then when you get into it, you learn more about CSS styling, embedding images, embedding video, using JavaScript to add complexity, and so on. But it's introduced in an order that gives you the ability to just go off and start making stuff right away. Um, Not to sound like a broken record, but also in Mario Maker, you don't start with every element and enemy. You need to unlock those tools by playing levels. So you sort of earn them by playing more. And um, again, that serves to sort of give you great examples of what to make, but it also incentivizes people to play each other's levels, which is a really important part of the ecosystem. You ideally, for any of these tools, you want a culture around them that that includes, creation, but also consumption and feedback, and more creation based on the feedback, and more consumption of the new stuff, and so on. So that virtuous cycle is something you need to kickstart, and this is a great way to do it. Um, the third element is combinatorics, and what I mean by that is just all the ways that you can combine um, a tool with another tool given, um, make each one that much more useful. And we all know from permutation uh, and combination formulas that they get big pretty fast. So here's an example where in Flick Game, which is a tool that lets you make basically interactive slideshows, um, you draw on the screen, but you also can assign colors to become links between the slides, essentially. So there's really only this one tool in Flick Game, but it operates on two levels already. You are representing something on the screen, and then you're also creating the way that the user will navigate at the same time. So, uh, this is a great example where the combinatorics are such that you only need one thing basically, and it does everything. Um, and then here's that tool again, Mario Maker. This is my favorite example of combinatorics because um, many things operate this way in the game, but um, you know, we all know what the mushroom does in Mario. It makes Mario bigger. So you can put mushrooms in your levels. You can just put them out on the floor, and they'll slide around as they do. You can also drag them into brick blocks or question blocks, and they'll be embedded in there until Mario bops them out. Um, but you can also drag them over enemies. And what does it do? It makes them grow. So it becomes not only sort of an element in your level, it also becomes an element that you use in the level editor itself. Um, yeah, it just increases the combinatorial power of that tool. Um, I just want to talk about my own work a little bit. Um, so at Code Combat, we make this new game that teaches programming for upper middle and high school kids, and it's separated into modules which have certain learning goals, and the modules proceed as sort of puzzle experiences um, and concept checks and cinematics and cutscenes, and uh, you as you proceed through this path of learning stuff, um, you gather knowledge about programming, and then at the end of each of these modules is a capstone project, which is a creative project that allows students to express themselves using the programming skills that they've gained over the module. So for this first module, really, we're just introducing a few things: sequential algorithms, uh, using functions with arguments, and sort of beginnings of how loops work. And so you can see in this screenshot to my whichever direction, I'm not even sure how the video is going to be oriented, um, that uh, you've got these move right, move up, move down, move left commands, and you've got build commands. And the build command can only build a certain set of objects. Um, so um, I think that this capstone project really adheres well to those three principles I outlined. So um, first, it's focused. You know, we're on a 7 by 6 grid. You're gonna make a top-down level to for your player to navigate that doesn't move. It's in a single room, and um, and it can be, it can be just that. It's a very simple experience, and there's a boss monster as well that sort of creeps over the level depending on the path you give it. Um, we introduce the up, down, left, right moves in the puzzles before you even get to this level. And we also introduce the build command and one of the things that you can build, which is just the arrows you see, um, which is actually four things: up, down, left, right, arrows. But anyway, uh, so we introduced those along the way in the puzzly levels, and then you get here and we introduce a few more items. We introduce a block that can turn other obstacles on and off, and those obstacles. And then I think we also introduce these spiky blocks that will return you to the beginning of the level if you touch them. There's no dying, you just get teleported back to the beginning. And um, with it also encourages you at the end of this at the end of this sort of tutorial section to check out the code bank, which is um, a foldable shelf that has even more tools that you can use. Um, so yeah, there's some introduced before this level, some introduced in the tutorial, and some that's just hinted at and you can explore for yourself. It's a pretty smooth introduction, I think. And then combinatorically, you can see that you have sort of a cursor that moves around that you can use to build things, and you move the cursor around with those up, down, left, right commands. But then you also move the boss monster with those up, down, left, right commands in a loop. Um, so you move your hero with those up, down, left, right. Um, you move your cursor and you move the boss with those same commands. So um, combinatorically, those just learning a little gets you a lot. Um, I wanted to include some more tools. I really wanted to include um, Bill Budge's pinball construction set, but I just couldn't. I don't think the uniqueness is really there. Um, it's really cool though. So I recommend Bill Budge's pinball construction set. But the rest of these are, I think, pretty much in that sweet spot that I was talking about, or very near to it, um, and are great examples, worth your time if you're interested in this area. So thank you so much for uh, listening with kind attention, or with half your attention. Any amount of attention is really awesome these days for me. So thank you for coming to the talk, and do be in touch. Um,